everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we want to talk about Ghostbusters 3. We're going to revisit that topic. We've done at least one video on the apparently, allegedly gonna happen sometime in our lifetime, Ghostbusters 3. And with the passing of Harold Ramis this week, we decided we should probably talk about this. I've gotten a lot of questions, people asking us to, first of all, to talk a little bit about Harold Ramis, but also to talk about Ghostbusters 3 and how we feel about the fact that they're still going forward without Harold Ramis. Frankly, I think they kind of came out a little too quick with that, so I want to talk about that a little bit and things like that. So anyway, first of all, why don't we talk a little bit about Harold Ramis? The first thing that I noticed when he passed and when people started reacting to it was, it's all Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And Harold Ramis did a lot more than just Ghostbusters.
Yep. That was my big thing. Whereas I'm not saying that we can we shouldn't remember him through Ghostbusters. Fine.
Well, of course, it's even fair to say that was his greatest role, I suppose.
Yeah,
but
I would say that. But that's the thing, is that he was more... He was an actual person. He wasn't Egon Spangler.
Yeah.
Right.
So technically, Egon Spangler's not dead. And Harold Ramis is. I mean, Harold Ramis had a significant career in front of the camera and behind the camera, more so behind the camera.
Yeah.
And I would say it's almost a crime to remember him solely through Ghostbusters.
And also to only think of him as having played that role, and that was a great thing he did, because didn't he co-write Ghostbusters?
Yeah, it
Yes.
was like Dan Aykroyd, Ivan Reitman, and Harold Ramis.
Yeah.
All together writing Ghostbusters.
Absolutely. I know he did lots of work, as we said, in front of and behind the camera. I had never seen Animal House, but I've always wanted to.
I forgot that was him.
A big part of that. And that's one movie that I've always wanted to see, and I've heard that has a lot of his... That was his early start, was Animal House, and what kind of got him on the map, so to speak, in that area. And
good call.
I've seen him in a couple other things. Some year in the last 10 years, he's had a few cameos and things. I really enjoyed that, but he's had a far greater career. Of course, the thing I will always remember him is as Egon.
Sure.
Of course.
Sure.
But I thought the same thing. I wondered why everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people were just like, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters. And then that was the big thing that came out of this, was the news story that Ghostbusters 3 is still go-ahead. Well, we could have talked a lot about a lot of other things, too.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of tasteless, just to say, hey guys, just so you know, the day now that this guy's passed on, the day after, let's let you know, Ghostbusters 3 is still going on.
Right.
Well, great. Couldn't we have just... I mean, because it's not like it's on a short list of things to get made. They don't even know what's going to go in the movie, let alone what's going to end up being.
They have a script. And of course, they're talking about how they have to rewrite the script. They've had a script for a while now. But what I thought was troubling about it, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I haven't heard anything about Ghostbusters 3 news in months.
Yeah.
Me neither. And I've heard...
Going on maybe closer to a year now. And it seemed a lot like just, well, everybody is asking that question. And of course, I don't think it's crazy that was the first thing that popped in a lot of people's heads. Sure, I wondered about it.
I mean...
Yeah.
The only thing that I can really say that makes sense to me why they would say, hey, we're going to go ahead and go with Ghostbusters 3 is that now they can't. They just physically cannot have the complete group of guys be in this movie.
Yeah.
So at this point, it makes it easier to say, we're going to go ahead and do this movie regardless of whether or not Bill Murray's in it. So...
But see, they had already said that.
And
That was the last news I'd heard, and now all the articles I was reading today were saying that there's a good chance now he's going to cameo.
It was an interesting juxtaposition on that, because I'd heard the same news, but I was reading an article that explained that the news of Ghostbusters 3 in the last 4 years has basically followed the health of Harold Ramis. His health had gone up and had gone down, and when his health was up, you heard a little more talk about it because he was more involved in it. When his health went down, he had kept his health problems kind of a secret. And I was reading about the fact that sometimes he was even just confined to a wheelchair. He couldn't walk very well, and I had no idea.
Well, and that's why I wish that we were a little bit more solemn and a little bit more reverential about it for a couple of days before we started immediately talking about how this is going to affect this other movie.
Exactly.
Because it wasn't just somebody who died of old age. If he'd been 90... Mm-hmm. And he just passed on because he got old, then I wouldn't be reacting that way. But it wasn't a natural death. Well, I mean, it was a natural death in that it was a disease that killed him.
Right.
But it wasn't like he didn't die of natural causes. He died of a horrible, debilitating illness, and nobody saw it coming that fast. Yeah. You know what I mean? This
he didn't share.
This
Only
was
close.
Yeah, this was.
Circle.
You're right, and this was as surprising to the general populace as, say, when Christopher Reeve passed away. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think I just wish that we were reacting to this more as the surprise that it was.
You know, like saying or presenting that news so quickly after he dies that Ghostbusters 3 is still go-ahead is almost like saying that Ghostbusters 3 is more important than Harold Ramis the man.
I don't know if I would go exactly that far, but I totally understand that.
But it's also doing the same thing that everyone else was doing and commenting about how great he was in Ghostbusters, saying that this is the main thing that is now the big news topic because of his passing. He was involved in lots of other things. Now his last major movie, Year One, didn't perform very well, but he was still working on other things as well as Ghostbusters.
Wait, he was involved in Year One?
Yeah.
I thought that was an Ivan Reitman thing. Maybe it was Harold Ramis. I don't know.
Well, he was definitely involved in it.
Oh, was he? Okay. One of the things that
they can't all be gold.
And by the way, I should mention this real quick since we're jumping back and forth between the Ghostbusters 3 thing and other things that he did. The big thing besides Ghostbusters that I will always remember Harold Ramis for is Groundhog Day, which is one of my favorite movies.
Yes, indeed.
And I think that it is as good of a film as Ghostbusters, and it winds up a lot on like top 10 comedies of all time. I think it's warranted. I love that movie, and again, I just wish people were talking more about that stuff.
There's another movie he was involved in that I haven't seen. It's Caddyshack.
Oh, I didn't know he was...
You haven't seen Caddyshack?
I have not seen Caddyshack. One of the things that I've wanted to do, since he passed away, it got me thinking about all the things that
I'll just judge you guys later.
All the things that he's
so
been
we're going to have
in.
a Harold Ramis marathon later on, the three of us, right? Like, we're going to watch Stripes.
That's what I'm
we're
doing,
gonna watch...
as a matter of fact. Last night I went and watched Ghostbusters because it was the first thing I wanted to see in a long time.
I think it'd be fun to get together, maybe.
Absolutely, it would be.
We should do that.
I went ahead and did that because it was...
Maybe we could do a couple commentaries. We could do like a series of Harold Ramis commentaries, do 2 or 3.
Hey, why not?
That'd be fun, yeah.
The thing that I loved him most for was, as a lot of people did, was Ghostbusters. But that was the first one I started to do, and I decided already, and now that you mentioned, that'd be great for us to all do it, is to go through all of these movies and see the ones I haven't seen before, see what else he was involved in,
and I think his involvement,
know his work.
And I think his involvement in a lot of things does get kind of downplayed.
It does.
He was, and I think that happens sometimes with writer-directors when they're, I mean with director-actors, when they don't star in their own movies a lot. Because Harold Ramis didn't star as often in movies he directed, right? He would often be in them, but he wasn't usually the main guy.
Right. You know, Analyze This was a pretty big movie, but it was De Niro. I mean, that's the reason you went to see that movie.
Ramis is in that movie, isn't he? Or is
I
he
don't
not?
recall him being in the movie.
See, that's the thing. But I guess that's what I'm pointing out is that there are a lot of Harold Ramis movies where I can't remember if he was actually in them.
Right. He worked on Analyze This and Analyze That, and I've not seen either one of those either. But
I've seen the first one, and I think it's hilarious.
The first one's quite good. The second one's kind of meh, but.
Well,
that's why I skipped that. That's what I heard.
Isn't that Billy Crystal as well?
Yeah, Billy Crystal, which I love Billy Crystal.
Love Billy Crystal.
I think he's hilarious.
So I don't know. It's also really interesting with the Ghostbusters 3 thing how I downplayed Harold Ramis's involvement in it has been in certain articles, because it's interesting that you said you read one where they were talking about how involved he was maybe in it. There's a lot of other things I've been reading where they're acting like where they're trying to act like he had nothing to do with it, and it was just going to be a little bit cameo. It was going to be really easy to take out, and the fact that he's not with us anymore isn't really going to affect the movie very much. I think the verdict is really out right now on just what he was doing with it. Does anybody really know? I'm seeing kind of conflicting things on that.
Now that you say it, the things that I have seen have been somewhat conflicting. I seem to think though that they're trying purposefully to downplay his actual involvement.
Well, let me ask you this: Did he co-plot the thing?
Ooh, that I'm not sure about.
I don't know if he put pen to paper, but did he have anything to do with any of the plotting of the thing in the first place? Because if so, I don't like the way the way the media has been spinning it. Or the thing is, I don't know if it's the media, if it's Dan Aykroyd and those guys. I don't know who's spinning it this way.
Now Dan Aykroyd has always, had a thing with Harold Ramis. They've always been real tight, and he said something. I was reminded of something he said in the '90s, was that he wouldn't want to do Ghostbusters 3 without Harold Ramis.
Right. So it doesn't seem like, and that's why I paused when I said that, because that doesn't seem fair. I don't think he would do that.
Right. I don't think so either.
I think it's interesting, the idea that maybe he was super integrally involved with the conception of this project, because I've also heard that they weren't the ones writing it. Like, maybe they had input, but they...
Oh, you're right. Somebody else was hired, weren't they?
At one point, there was a rumor that the people writing it were the ones that were working on The Office.
The Office. You're right.
Oh.
See, it's been so long since I've heard this. We were talking about this back when I first interviewed Eric Burnham with Ghostbusters, and it just happened that Ghostbusters 3 news was finally coming out the week I did that interview. It was really weird. So Tim and I did a complete Ghostbusters-centric episode of Comic Book Late Night back when we were doing that. That was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is still... And apparently Elijah Dushku is still tied to the project, and she's supposed to be in it. I love that idea, by the way. I kind of hope that's happening. But I like the idea of female Ghostbusters, first of all.
I do, too.
But I also just really like Elijah Dushku, and I think she'd be really fun as a Ghostbuster, potentially.
The most recent news that I had heard about Ghostbusters 3 that I'd heard was this about Jonah Hill and Jonah Hill and Emma Stone. They had been offered parts in the movie. Emma Stone passed on it.
Right.
I'm really disappointed in that.
Me too.
Which, that makes me a little nervous, because I'm thinking, if Emma Stone's not going to want to be attached to it, maybe it sucks.
Maybe so.
Why would she, of all people, not want to be in Ghostbusters?
But she's geeky. She's
but
a pretty good actress.
Perhaps Ghostbusters doesn't mean the same thing to her that it means to lots of us. She's similar in age to us, but I'm just not sure. But Jonah Hill, I like the idea of Jonah Hill.
But look at her other projects. Why wouldn't you do Ghostbusters?
Well, indeed.
Why not?
Jonah Hill hasn't said yes or no yet. So that's all very interesting to me.
I kind of feel like they should scrap and start over. I do.
Well, and that springboards us into speculation, or not speculation, but like let's talk about what we would like to see in a perfect world. What would you do in doing a new Ghostbusters? Because I think, and we'll go round robin, and I'll let each of us give an idea of what you'd like to see with another Ghostbusters. Because I feel like it is, because I'm hearing a lot of people saying, just let it die, just don't make another one. I don't 100% agree with that. I feel like Ghostbusters is something that that does have legs, that is a really cool continuity and a really cool universe. And yeah, it was originally those 4 guys, but I don't think that means that we can't jump into the future and see what the future of it would look like, potentially without at least some of them.
To support this argument, I mean, just look at the plot of the first movie. You have 3 scientists, and and then hired help.
Yeah.
And in the second movie, the hired help becomes more integrally involved. Now, here's the deal. That means that you could hire someone to be a Ghostbuster who can legitimately become a Ghostbuster, regardless of whether or not
it's built into the premise.
And the real Ghostbusters worked okay. I could see something like that, or not real Ghostbusters, Extreme Ghostbusters. I could see something like Extreme Ghostbusters, where you have obviously lineage, where we make sure and have like the presence of the originals in some way, even if they're not there. We know they existed. We're not pretending like they're not there. We're not going to reboot it. Don't reboot Ghostbusters. Don't ever do that. But I don't think. But I mean, like, I feel like you could franchise it pretty easily. What I mean is, I feel like the idea of franchise Ghostbusters, ghosts are a big thing. People now cannot afford to be in denial about it. We know they're around. Let's see other cities. Burnham has made a great case for that in his comic book series, because we've seen a lot of new Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters Chicago.
Yeah, and they're fun. And so I'm just saying, create some new characters. But I have a very specific idea for what I would like to see. But I want to go to you guys. Brandon, what would you want to see?
Well, I think, being that the first 2 Ghostbusters are kind of set in the present day of when they were made, we can totally do another present day Ghostbusters.
Exactly.
And it wouldn't feel out of place to have a new set of Ghostbusters because we had so much time between the second Ghostbusters and today.
Right.
So if we had a new set of Ghostbusters, it would just feel like a natural progression. It's
Precisely.
built in to the time frame in which we've been running.
But we know that is what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's a great start. And I don't know about...
So let me ask you this: so you're not then with the folks that are saying just let the project die?
Yeah, I'm not with them at all.
Okay.
I was interested to hear that they were still going ahead with it. I think that, as we mentioned, that came out too soon.
Right.
But it kind of cements the fact that this is a thing, and it's still going forward, and I'm okay with it under the context of what they've kind of got going already. It kind of fits in even without the original Ghostbusters. It still kind of fits in. It's for us as a generation that watched it growing up, and for a new generation.
Well, here's the thing: because of what the initial premise for that was where it was going to be the original Ghostbusters train another set. The argument is without Egon, you shouldn't do that, and I don't 100% agree with that, but I can kind of see why people are saying that.
And indeed, but I would say...
But that's what I'm saying. So, like,
even
the
with
premise
a couple,
they had, they can't exactly do.
Even with even with a couple or a few Ghostbusters left...
You know, is it going to be awkward for them to, in the movie, go, well, Egon's gone?
I think they should start this movie with some newGhostbusters already hired.
Me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want an origin story. I really don't. And I know I always say that, but my point is that's what they're doing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm almost positive that what they're doing is, it just from everything they've been saying, it really sounds like, because this is what we do with Hollywood a lot of these days. We've got to hold people's hands, and we've got to say, you know, this is the originals. Now we have to introduce you to these new characters and have them be introduced to the old characters.
Well, you have more insight into this than...
Just have them already started.
You have more insight into this than I do, but I seem to think... I didn't get the idea that they were providing another origin story.
I'm almost positive that's where they'd go with
Well,
it.
if that's what they are doing, I'm not exactly okay with that.
I mean, now I'm not saying that I have I can't remember if I specifically read that's, but I really think that when because I'm trying to go back in my mind 3 years ago, because it's been forever since the project was announced. It seemed like what I read initially was the old Ghostbusters training new. I don't want to see that. I kind of rather them just be established already.
I like the idea that I read this somewhere. This was rumored, so I don't know if this is fact or not. Whatever. I do like the idea, though, that Oscar will be one of the Ghostbusters.
That's a great idea.
Yes.
I love the idea of all I can think of is Sigourney Weaver. Dana Barrett's kid will be the next Ghostbuster.
Well,
I think that's a great idea.
He'd be like our age.
Yeah,
He'd be in his late 20s, early 30s.
And I like the idea that at some point you could have trained some other super genius, or you know what? Let's give Ray Stantz a time to shine, and maybe he's because he's a scientist too. And in the movie or in the movies, you really have these two brains going back and forth. And it's not like Ray Stantz didn't have any science chops, so it's not like this stuff didn't get built independently of his involvement. So, I mean, we've always seen Egon as the brains, but let's give it a shot. Let's say that now they're established, they don't need to invent so much equipment, or at least they don't need to invent it with as ridiculous speed as they had in the first one.
True.
So now we can have Ray go off and be involved in Ray's occult books, and then we can have another set of Ghostbusters that are kind of working not necessarily independently, but let's say underneath the supervision of Ray Stantz.
You know, I read an article that was a reprint now that Harold Ramis has passed on, and it was Harold. They were interviewing in this part. It was Harold Ramis, and he was talking about it, and he said something that I've never thought of, but it's so true. Is that Egon really is the brains, Ray is the heart, and
they even say that in the movie. Ray Stantz, part of the Ghostbusters.
And Vinkman is the mouth.
Yeah,
and it just works, and
Winston is the muscle.
and that brings me to my idea. What I like, and this isn't what they're doing, but here's what I'd love to see for Ghostbusters 3.
Yes.
If we could get a rewrite, I wish it was Winston's movie. I think what would be really cool would be get Ernie Hudson back. And Ernie Hudson signed on for it. He's supposed to at least get a cameo. But what I'd love to see is Ernie Hudson comes in and the other Ghostbusters are wherever they are. Maybe they're still involved. Maybe they've gone their own way. I like the idea of Ray going to Ray's Occult's books, but like for whatever reason, something happened and he wants nothing to do with the Ghostbusters anymore. I think that would be kind of interesting.
Maybe he's just like hires himself out as the guy who does research for the Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
because it is Ray's occult books.
Or he's
Consulting
like he's like a hermit now, and for some reason he's angry with them and wants something. I don't know, but anyway, what I think would be cool is because Ernie Hudson. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him lately or seen interviews with him, but he doesn't look very different than he used to. And I think it would be really interesting, especially given that he was just the muscle, he was just hired help in the first two, if he was like president of this huge like national or global Ghostbusters corporation, and he was like the head of them. Or just ran his own team, but like he was the head of these new Ghostbusters.
President Ghostbusters.
So he's like yeah, so he's that would be funny if they called him that. But anyway, so he's the mentor of these younger people.
Sure.
The CEO. But just let that's the status quo now. Like Winston runs the show. I think that'd be really cool because that way one of the original Ghostbusters is not just cameoing or sort of being in the background, but he's one of your main characters. You give him a character arc. You let him be the main guy of it, and that's cool because he didn't really get to do all that much in the first two.
That's true, and it gives it a major tie-in.
Flesh out this character you already have.
Yeah.
Use what you have.
And it would legitimize it. Mm-hmm. I think maybe even more so than what they're doing. But I don't know. Anyway, that's what I'd love to see. I think that'd be fantastic. But I'm also saying that because I don't think Ernie Hudson has gotten enough to do since Ghostbusters.
Well,
so
I've seen him in like bit parts of a lot of things.
Yeah,
he does fine, and I like Ernie Hudson, but I'd like to see.
I don't know why he hasn't had
a
bigger career. Yeah, I don't understand that.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
Here's what you do.
Okay.
You take Ray Stantz and you take Winston Zeddemore, and you cast them as like the last two Ghostbusters, right? So they go around and they try to fight all these ghosts and stuff, and they keep saying, "Man, we getting too old for this stuff."
That's great, Vince. Well, and I want to mention this too. For a long time, and I don't know if he's still on about this anymore because there have been developments since this, but for a long time, Bill Murray said he wouldn't come back unless he got to be a ghost. And I kind of wonder if Ramis's passing might not make him change his mind a little bit, because now that one of them has passed on, that might feel a little bit awkward. You know, if we killed one off and brought him back as a ghost, it might feel in poor taste because we don't have Egon.
Yeah, I can see where you'd say that. I would be okay with it.
I would too, but I feel like it would be a risk. I'm afraid audiences might wonder about it. Might feel like this doesn't feel like, because the thing is, you would have to establish why, this sounds morbid too, just thinking about it, you would have to establish why one of them gets to be a ghost and one of them is just gone.
And I actually thought about that the other day, because of the whole Bill Murray wanted to be a ghost thing. If you had one that actually passed on to the other side of the ethereal plane, but one that didn't, that stuck around.
Yeah, and that could be interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
And not necessarily tasteless.
Right, and that's exactly what I was thinking about, like, well, Egon decided he didn't want to hang around Earth, but, you know...
Yeah, or you could just have a line where Egon's off studying some kind of supernatural blah blah in Europe or whatever, and this is...
See, I don't know if I'd want him to go there. And
I wouldn't want him to go there
And
either.
I kind of think, usually when this sort of thing happens and somebody dies like this, unless you recast it, generally, especially when it's like a close-knit group of friends like you kind of have here, Bill Murray's a thing, but you know what I mean. Like a lot of the time they like to acknowledge it somehow, and I bet you money, Vince. I bet you $50 that they acknowledge this and that Egon in the Ghostbusters universe has passed away. I bet you money that's how they do it.
Which I'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
I like the idea of...
I'm not saying your idea is bad, but they're not going to do that.
I like the idea of Bill Murray being a ghost, because I like the idea that, let's say that Dana Barrett and Peter Venkman get together, and let's say it's now Oscar Venkman as opposed to Oscar Barrett. And
I like that a lot.
I like this idea. And let's say that Peter Venkman has passed on.
Venkman sounds better.
So let's say that Venkman has passed on. So Dana's now alone again, and this kid has grown up, with maybe a few father issues, and comes across the ghost of his dad. That would be kind of interesting.
That is really
that would
interesting.
be kind of interesting, but how would you have Venkman's character? What if you had what if you had a situation where it was explained that Venkman and Egon they crossed the streams or something, and it totally just obliterated them, and that's how they died.
Ooh, I don't know. Be great. Well, you couldn't do a flashback or anything, but
No,
you
but
wouldn't want one if that's what happened.
Imagine every particle in your body ceasing to
Yeah.
exist.
Well, anyway, I don't want to start bordering on the morbid here, but that's what's so
I think there are
interesting.
several
And
words.
you know, let's take this full circle now and go back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Don't you think that that not just the popularity of it, but don't you think that Ghostbusters subject matter has everything to do with why we're just talking about Ghostbusters with Ramis' death? You see what I'm saying?
Probably, yes.
You know, he
There's a
passed
lot of death
away,
in Ghostbusters.
so we're thinking about the afterlife and death and stuff, right? Like,
Yeah,
true enough.
You're seeing a lot of fans drawing pictures of Egon's ghost, talking to the other Ghostbusters and things like that, which I don't think is in poor taste. I think that's cool.
I
I really like that. I'm fine with that.
I mean, it's all done lovingly.
It is, yeah.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything mean-spirited or tasteless about that. And anyway, but I think that probably has a lot to do with it, because it's like how many really how many people are like famous people, like actors, are associated so hard with a property that's about death. And so you think,
Ooh, that's a good
you
one.
think about that,
Yeah.
I mean, there are some, but I don't even think, we're not gonna have like we had this with him because Ghostbusters was so huge, and because it was like a childhood phenomenon for a lot of us, right? A lot of us grew up with it, and it was this mega franchise. You're not gonna have this when say somebody what's her name? Whoopi Goldberg passes away with Ghost. You know what I mean? Like we're not we're not gonna be drawing ghost pictures because it's
That, and you make a good point. Ghost Dad.
Ghost, yeah, with Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby.
The
You're not gonna have that
difference is
either.
the difference is one of these movies was critically acclaimed, and one of these movies people remember because they wish they couldn't remember it.
I didn't hear
okay?
anybody mention Ghost when Swayze passed, so.
Oh yeah.
Oh, true.
I am thinking of the right movie, right? With Whoopi Goldberg.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
By the way, have you ever seen that?
Yeah, it's
that's a great movie. Yeah. Ghost Dad, not so much.
I was just kind of dying that we, believe it or not, we had a conversation about
managed to
Ghost
get-
Dad earlier today.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, really?
He brings it up. We brought that up.
Oh,
In fact,
nice.
I was thinking of that. I was like,
What a
I'm
strange
going to completely avoid coming. And then Brandon's like, or Ghost Dad when Bill Cosby died. Yeah, thanks. Well, anyway, I
You know
think,
me, I like to bring a lot to the table.
did you guys have any final thoughts on this?
I think we've pretty much gone full
Besides
circle
just,
on that.
it's really sad Rick Moranis passed. And nobody saw it. Rick Moranis. I can't believe I did that. We were talking about this earlier.
Harold Ramis.
We were talking about this earlier, where
breaks my heart.
we kept accidentally saying Rick Moranis. Sorry, Harold Ramis.
Well, you can kind of see why.
Presumably
it
all
happens.
is well with the Rick
Yeah,
Moranis world.
because they both have an is at the end. That's the only
Speaking
reason.
of-
And they're both in the same movies.
Speaking of Rick Moranis, he's been in retirement for quite some
Forever.
time.
Yeah.
And I don't think he has any.
Has he really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
don't think he has any
fascinating.
plans to come out of movie retirement.
No. You won't see him in Ghostbusters 3.
I mean, and there's some people like Dan Aykroyd. How would I know this? That
Because you're the biggest Dan Aykroyd fan on the planet.
I'll be
Planet
a
on the
fan of the planet. That's all right.
Yeah.
But-
have you ever seen Soul Man?
Yeah.
Of course you have. Anyway,
I didn't see all of it, but
I know very few people that watched that. It was so short-lived, but I was like, Vince knows everything about Dan Aykroyd. He's seen Soul Man.
I've seen. I kind of wanted to come out.
Crystal
with
Head
DVD.
vodka. Have you?
I've had it.
Oh yeah.
I've not had his wine, but because the vodka's easier to get your hands on.
And I'm trying really hard to think of more really obscure Dan Aykroyd things, and they're just not coming to me.
Well, he's big into UFOs and all that type of stuff too.
I've not seen Dan Aykroyd unplugged on UFOs.
I saw
Oh,
a
is
video
that
of
a
him
thing?
talking
Wait.
at length about Dan
Oh, yes, I have.
Aykroyd.
I forgot about that. I have seen that.
Anyway, you were
Oh,
saying.
man. You know what? One of these days, I'm gonna do a whole bunch of research, and I'm gonna try to build the hardest Dan Aykroyd trivia quiz there's ever been, and I'm gonna force you to take it on camera.
I'll be very, very upset when he.
Wouldn't that be the best idea ever?
Yeah, I
think,
like it.
I think I'm gonna do that.
Let's try it.
We're gonna see if he is the biggest Dan Aykroyd geek on the planet.
He's gonna be like, "What was Dan Aykroyd's first dog's name?" I'll be like, "He didn't have a dog." I don't
Trick
know.
question! I don't do trick questions like that.
I don't even know if he had a pet. So whatever. I'm not a fan of his personal life.
Yeah, it wouldn't be like personal trivia, Vince.
I'm sure he's a wonderful man.
Well,
and all he really knows about is his movies and stuff.
Well, on that note, everybody, thanks as always for watching. We sure appreciate it. And leave your comments. I'm sure everybody's going to have varying opinions on Ghostbusters 3. Let us know what you think about that. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And I'm Brandon.
You know, that doesn't come naturally to you, does it?
Not exactly. Not exactly.